So hello and welcome to this webinar about the ITN 2017 call. My name is Jennifer Brennan and I'm working here at the Irish Universities Association, supported by the Irish Research Council, and I'm the National Contact Point and National Delegate for the Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions. Over the next 35 to 40 minutes, I'm going to take you through the introduction and the nutshell of what the ITN 2017 call is about. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in using the questions interface that is provided. We'll do our best at the end to answer as many questions. You might want to wait until the end just to make sure that your questions aren't sort of answered at a later point in the presentation. The slides that we're sharing today can be downloaded from the webinar's handouts interface and will be posted online on our website in the events and training section, and the recorded webinar video will be posted there as well. So just to begin by talking about the Irish Marie Sklodowska-Curie office. So we are sponsored by the Irish Research Council and based at the IUA. We promote the actions to Irish researchers and research organisations. We support researchers in preparing their funding applications, and we contribute to the development of the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions. We currently have 3 staff members. That's myself as NCP and National Delegate, and that means I sit on the Programme Committee in Brussels. We have Dr. Suzanne Miller-Delaney, who is a Programme Officer here, specifically tasked with supporting the 12 SFI-funded research centres. And we have Grace McCarthy, who is a part-time Research Officer for Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions and our Euraccess office. So just to talk to you a little bit about the supports that we have on offer for the 2017 ITN call. We have for the first time merged together various support documents that we had in previous calls into one ITN handbook, which will cover off an introduction and policy context, an annotated template which tells you what to put in each section, and an how to submit guide about how to put through the online submission. This will be available the very latest, November 21st, on the IUA Marie Curie website in the events and training section. To complement the handbook, we also have a series of training videos. So they cover 3 different parts of the application: excellence, impact and implementation. We have a focus on training and supervision, and we have a focus on sections 2.3 and 2.4, dissemination and communications. So to start off by talking about the ITN call for 2017. So the policy objective of innovative training networks is to train a new generation of creative, entrepreneurial and innovative research. It's essentially about quality of research training. It's a research training program for early stage researchers. That's for people who have less than 4 years research experience after their undergraduate degree. There's a strong focus within the program on intersectoral and international cooperation. Looking at intersectoral cooperation then, for the purposes of the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, they have defined 2 distinct sectors. The academic sector, which encompasses higher education institutions, public research organisations and private non-profit research organisations, and the non-academic sector, which is essentially anybody who isn't academic, but can include industry, large and small, civil society organisations like voluntary, community sector, charities, NGOs, the government or public sector, and other organisations, such as cultural bodies, museums, libraries, etc. Participation by the non-academic sector is a must-have in order to be successful for the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, particularly the ITN call. So a typical ITN looks like this. It's a consortium of organisations from different countries and different sectors, and in a moment we'll deal with the composition of the consortium and the requirements. They propose a joint research training programme. They then, once they have the funding, recruit researchers across the consortium. Each researcher has an individual research project. The recruits that you bring in must adhere to the overall Marie Curie Actions mobility rule. So they have lived in the country of their host organisation for no more than 12 months in the 3 years prior to recruitment. In addition to the individual research project that they will do, you will equip them with advanced research skills and transferable skills training, both locally at their main home organisation and also through network-wide events such as summer schools, training weeks and workshops that the consortium will organise specifically for them. Finally, every researcher will spend time at another member of the consortium on what's called a secondment. In order to be competitive, every researcher must get at least 1 secondment to the non-academic sector if they're hosted mainly in an academic organisation, or vice versa. If they're hosted mainly by the non-academic sector like a company, they must get time in an academic organisation as well. So there are broadly two kinds of participants in an ITN. There are the beneficiaries who recruit and train researchers, and the partner organisations who don't recruit any researchers but do host short secondments and perhaps contribute to training activities as well, or they don't host secondments but they just contribute to training activities. So this is illustrated by the diagram on the right hand side of the screen, which shows the coordinator at the centre, 6 beneficiaries in this particular action. Each one of these would recruit a researcher for the full duration of the programme. And then we have the partner organisations, which sit on the outside, who will come in to deliver training to the researchers, but also the researchers from the beneficiaries can go and spend time with the partner organisations as well. And of course, they can spend time in other beneficiaries too. So there are 3 overall ITN modes that you can apply for. There's the European Industrial Doctorate, or EID, there's the European Joint Doctorate, or EJD, and there's the European Training Network, or ETN. The programmes last for 48 months. The minimum consortium for an EID is 2 beneficiaries from 2 countries and 2 sectors. So a perfectly eligible consortium for this programme would be 1 university in Ireland and 1 company in France, for example. That's the minimum that's required. And actually around 40 to 50% of applications funded every year for EID are just this minimum. The European Joint Doctorate is 3 academic PhD degree awarding beneficiaries in 3 countries. And then the European Training Network is 3 beneficiaries in 3 countries. It doesn't matter what sector they are from. On top of this requirement for beneficiaries, you can have as many partner organisations from any sector that you like, and there's no minimum or maximum. Just bring in the ones that you need. The early stage researchers themselves are funded for between 3 and 36 months. The number of researchers you can have funded for the European Industrial Doctorate with just 2 beneficiaries is up to 5 early stage researchers, and it's up to 15 early stage researchers for a larger network, say 3, 4, 5 or 6 beneficiaries. We would counsel you, of course, to look at the capacity of the industry partners to have so many students based in their organisation, because there's a requirement about that, which I'll go over in a moment. Then for the for the EJD and the ETN, there is a maximum of 15 early stage researchers that are allowed. The educational requirements for the early stage researchers, so they must be working towards a PhD in the EID programme. But the trick with this one is they must spend 50% of their time in the non-academic sector. So in that example I gave of a higher education institution in Ireland and a company in France, the researchers must spend at least 50% of their time actually working in the company in France, although they'll get their PhD from the Irish HEI. For the joint or double PhD programme, for the EJD programme, the researchers must be working towards a joint or a double PhD that's awarded either jointly by 2 of the academic beneficiaries or a double degree where they get 2 degrees, 1 from each. And of course, they'll need to spend enough time in each institution to allow them to get the joint or double degree. Then finally, for the ETN, there's no educational degree required. So the early stage researchers don't have to be working towards an educational degree, but a PhD is typical. You do see master's degrees sometimes in some programs as well. So in terms of the consortium that we have, let's just have a look at which countries can get involved. So member states and associated countries, so they're the countries that can participate in Horizon 2020 they've bought in. So places like Norway and Israel can participate either as beneficiaries or partner organisations. You can have more than one beneficiary from the same country, but you do have to be careful to make sure that no more than 40% of the budget can go to one country. Now, that doesn't mean no more than 40% of the researchers, it means no more than 40% of the budget. So when looking at a consortium that has more than one beneficiary from one country in it, you need to work out the overall budget and check to make sure that you're not over that 40%. And the exception to the rule there is the 2 beneficiary EID, where it's absolutely fine for 40% of the budget to go to more than one country. It couldn't happen in the 2 beneficiary EID. It is okay to include non-European countries as beneficiaries or partners, but there's a whole range of countries who aren't allowed automatically to get funding from Horizon 2020. So for example, countries like Chile and Argentina are allowed to automatically be in your consortia and get funding, but places like the US, Australia, Japan, Brazil, India are not allowed. we would always recommend you're better off to put in them as partner organizations, so doing secondments and training rather than as beneficiaries, because if you put them in as beneficiaries, the evaluators have to agree that they're absolutely essential for the project and authorize the giving of EU funds to these organizations. And to be honest, that doesn't happen very often. So let's have a look at a couple of examples of the different kinds of ITNs we have. So this is an example of a European training network. It's called CHESS, it's in Connected Health. It's a €4 million project coordinated by UCD. So this one has 8 beneficiaries and 10 partner organizations hosting secondments and delivering training. And as you can see by the color coding, there are 4 academic beneficiaries and there are 4 non-academic beneficiaries in this particular consortium, including 2 companies, a chamber of commerce and a private hospital. Each of the beneficiaries on that circle there will recruit in 1 or 2 researchers and train them up. The researchers will spend time on secondment and other members of the consortium, including the 10 partner organisations. My second example is of a European industrial doctorate with just 2 beneficiaries. So this is a project in veterinary diagnostics. It involves Queen's University, Belfast, and a small laboratory, a veterinary diagnostics laboratory in Ireland called the ILDS. They have funding for 4 early stage researchers who are going to get their PhD from Queen's, but who will spend at least 50% of their time consecutively or cumulatively in ILDS as part of their research. This one actually doesn't have any partner organisations, so obviously they were able to design a programme that they could deliver with just 2 beneficiaries and with no need for the POs. The third example then is of a European industrial doctorate with a larger number of beneficiaries. So this one has 8 beneficiaries. There are 3 from the academic sector and 5 from the non-academic sector. This funds about 15 researchers and it's in psychotraumatology. So even though it's an industrial doctorate, that's just the name. It actually is more like an intersectoral doctorate. So you can have one that's more in the social sciences, humanities area. It doesn't have to be a STEM project involving industry. So as you can see, the non-academic partners here are not necessarily industry partners. So they are the Red Cross, the Rape Crisis Centre, the Police Service of Northern Ireland, for example. And I think that's a very interesting example of a different kind of European industrial doctorate. My final example then is the European Joint Doctorate, and this one is in reproductive health. European Joint Doctorate Consortia do tend to be a little smaller than the normal ETN. So for an ETN, we would normally say between 6 and 10 beneficiaries is the average. For European Joint Doctorate, it's somewhere between 4 and 8. The majority of them all have all academic beneficiaries, and this is because of the complexity of doing joint and degree joint or double degree awards. It would make it quite difficult if you also threw a non-academic beneficiary in there who can't award any PhDs at all. And then the researcher hosted there would be trying to get a PhD from 2 other places within the network. So it's a little bit too complex. So this one involves 5 different universities in 4 different countries. 5 different countries, including UCD here in Ireland. And they have 9 partner organisations, and the bulk of these are non-academic. So this is how the researchers get their mandatory secondments in the non-academic sector. In this case, it's through the partner organisations rather than through the beneficiaries. So we're going to have a look now at trying to get the concept right before you start writing an application. So what's very important to understand is that ITN is not a research project, it's a research training program. And you need to orient yourself towards that mindset in order to write a competitive application. So quite helpfully, there's a really good document that can assist with this change in mindset. It's called the Erasmus Mundus Handbook of Excellence in Doctoral Programs. And it's based on the experience of the old Erasmus Mundus Joint Doctorate, which operated between 2007 and 2013. That's now the EJD program in Marie Sklodowska-Curie. And the content is relevant for all the ITN applications, not the EJD. And we have it available on our website, or you can download it from the link here. So this particular document outlines the quality components for a good doctoral training network. So the first one is to develop a comprehensive program vision. The second one is to provide an integrated training and research strategy, to recruit excellent students and deliver value to them, to develop a realistic management, financial and institutional strategy. So let's look at each of those 4 aspects in detail. The program vision. So what you need to do is identify the unique selling point of the program. Identify the key research goals and how the consortium will deliver it, including through secondments. Identify why this particular consortium should deliver the programme. What's the European added value of working together in this area, and how will it be joined up? Consider how the consortium and programme could be sustainable after the funding ends. And this is the most important one for me. Understanding how the graduating early stage researchers will be employable, by who and why. The output of these programs from the Commission's point of view is not the research outputs. It's actually the researchers themselves that graduate from these programs. And they need to be a really highly trained cohort of researchers who are really employable in all different sectors, not just in industry. For EJD, you need to look at the doctoral examination processes that are in place across the consortium and clearly identify those that will be used for each ESR. And also for EJD, to show how the ESRs will be provided with recognisable degrees and how these are joined up across the consortium. Section B is about an integrated strategy for research, training, assessment and supervision. So you need to develop an effective research programme with balanced supervision processes and workloads across the consortium. Provide the early stage researchers with access to the best training, research tools and facilities. Ensure that the assessment mechanisms, so reporting, are there transfer exams, are there a mini thesis that needs to be submitted after year one, for example, are coherent and balanced across the consortium. The idea is that the early stage researchers, even though they're working in different places, will all kind of have the same rough experience of going through the doctoral programme. You've got to implement formal continuous progress monitoring, provide a collaborative research and communication platform for all the early stage researchers and the staff involved in the programme, and ensure effective intercultural awareness across the consortium. So you'll be bringing together, because of the mobility rule, quite a disparate group of people from different places around the world who have different experiences, and it's to try and make sure that they can seamlessly work together. In terms of an integrated strategy for the management, financial and institutional arrangements, it's important at the outset to identify which administrative units are responsible for early stage researchers. So Dean of Graduate Studies office, in terms of, say, financial monitoring, is it the research office, is it the finance office, who looks after these things? Plan your finances, allowing for risks and contingency. Plan for a consortium agreement, including things like intellectual property and research integrity issues. Ensure that the early stage researchers have employment contracts. That's a mandatory aspect in Marie Curie ITN, which I'll explain again in a moment. Implement a programme-wide quality assurance process. Have internal feedback and external quality review to have a look to make sure that your programme is working well. And implement a dynamic marketing or recruitment strategy, including attracting early stage researchers from outside of Europe. The final part then in this strategy is to recruit excellence early stage researchers. So you want to have a strategy to recruit and select the best equipped early stage researchers. You want to be attracting the best people into this programme. Ensure that these people are well supported logistically with things like visas and accommodation. And here's where the Euraccess office and IUA and the other Euraccess offices around the world can help. Support the early stage researchers academically and culturally to integrate into their new environment, including into any local doctoral schools that they will join up with. Join up your resource availability across the consortium, sort of infrastructure, equipment and IT capabilities, and prepare the early stage researchers to maximise their career potential. And that's really important. So considering these issues before you even start to write will really help you to change your research project into a research training programme. Let's look now briefly at the funding model. So there are two broad categories of funding. There's the cost for the researchers and the institutional costs, and the figures in the table are given per month. So the researchers must be employed. The grant agreement stipulates that, and even though they're PhD students, and it wouldn't be the norm in places like Ireland and the UK to actually hire them as employees, it has to be done for Marie Sklodowska-Curie. So the salary that they get is made up of the living allowance, to which a country coefficient for cost of living is applied, a mobility allowance flat rate, and a family allowance. Now, those figures are inclusive of employers' pay costs. So in Ireland, things like a mandatory employer's pension contribution and a mandatory employer's contribution to PRSI is taken away from that before the researchers are paid their salary. But if you can have a look as a back of the envelope calculation, you'll see that they are still paid extremely well compared to most early stage researchers in Ireland, particularly who just get a stipend. The research training and networking costs and management and indirect costs are worked out on a per month basis depending on the number of students given per each institution. However, in practice, in your consortium agreement, you can actually divide those out differently as you require. They don't necessarily have to be pro rata per month per student, so you divide them up as you need them. We can give more advice on that if needed. So let's look at writing an application, just focusing in on the evaluation. When you submit your proposal to the call, you are asked to choose from one of 8 broad disciplinary panels, which cover chemistry, physics, mathematics, life sciences, economic sciences, ICT and engineering, social sciences and humanities, environment and geosciences. All evaluation is carried out remotely now for Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions calls. Your proposal will be sent to at least 3 disciplinary experts. If the scores differ by more than 10% across the consortium, across the 3 evaluators, they have a virtual consensus meeting where they get to chat and agree on the scores and comments. In the European Training Network, the proposals are ranked by disciplinary panels. So you submit, for example, to the chemistry panel. You're ranked with other chemistry proposals, and they distribute the awards across the panels proportional to the number of proposals received. So if half the applications are in life sciences, they'll give half the budget for ETN to the life sciences panel. In EID and EJD, they do a final ranking in separate multidisciplinary EID and EJD panels. And for those, they have an allocated budget. So if we just look briefly at the evaluation criteria, I'm not going to read these out in detail. In the excellence section, which is worth 50% of the marks, they look at the quality of the research program, quality of the training program, quality of the supervision, and quality of the interaction between the participants. Under impact, which is 30% of the marks, they look at enhancing the career perspectives and employabilities of the early stage researchers, the contribution to structuring doctoral or early stage research training in Europe and strengthening European innovation capacity, the quality of the measures to exploit and disseminate, and the quality of the measures to communicate the project to different target audiences. In the implementation section, which is where 20% of the marks, they look at your work plan, your management structure and plan, your infrastructure of the participants, and the competencies and experiences and commitment of the participating organisations and their complementarity, how they kind of can harness things together. Just to reference one thing that's quite important for the evaluation criteria. So the Commission released a document in 2005 known as the Charter and Code. It's the European Charter for Researchers and Code of Conduct for their recruitment. These are embedded in the evaluation criteria for all Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, and you'll see reference to it throughout the proposal template and the guide for applicants. The Charter is about researchers' career management, and the Code is about open and transparent recruitment and appraisal. So most Irish research performing organisations have sent a letter to the Commission to formally endorse the Charter and Code. And if this is applicable, it should be included in the proposal, not just for your Irish partners, but also for the other organisations within Europe who may have endorsed it. A list is given on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen of all the organisations that have endorsed the Charter and Code. A number of institutions then went on to one step further and went through a process to get the HR Excellence in Research logo for the Commission, which is in recognition of putting together a plan to bridge the differences in their institution between the Charter and Code principles and what's currently happening. And this will be taken away from them if they don't basically manage to make the improvements over the time period of the award. So a number of Irish institutions have gone on and done this process. It's quite a lengthy thing. It takes quite a while, but congratulations to those. Of course, a number of organisations around Europe have it too, not just in Ireland. And if it's applicable for any participating organisation, you should include it in the proposal. On the bottom right-hand side there, you will find the link to where you can find a list of all the organisations that have been awarded the HR Excellence in Research logo. So just to finish off with some information about the call, it opened in September and it closes on the 10th of January. The budget is around €430 million, which is slightly higher than last year. However, it probably still will be a very competitive call. They've allocated €32 million to the EJD programme and €28 million specifically for EID. And in ETN, the budget will be divided out across the evaluation panel, depending on the number of applications each one receives. If you submit on the 10th of January, you'll get the results by May, and you can start the project then, say, within the next 9 to 12 months usually. For the 2016 ITN call looking at success rates, so the Irish success rate in coordinating proposals was about 13.5%, and the EU success rate overall was about 8.3%. We did really well, exceptionally well in the EJD program and the EID program, and punched above our weight in terms of ETN, where 7.7% of our applications were funded as opposed to 6.3% across Europe. So we're starting from a high base, but there's always room for improvement. And that leads me into the supports that are on offer from our office. So these will be available by next Monday, November 21st. We have the ITN handbook, we have the training videos, we have the recording of today's webinar and the slides from today's webinar. If you haven't already downloaded the slides from the handout section, you'll find them on our website by Monday. And that's the iua.ie/Marie Curie. In the events and training section, there'll be a link for today's webinar. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to stay online for a couple of minutes now to answer questions through the questions interface, and best of luck with writing your proposals. Bye-bye.